And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a little game called Tranquility, which I want to be straight up front with you is a big fat lie. I do not know why this game is called Tranquility. Let me explain. This is a cooperative game. Players are working together to place cards in a grid with almost no communication, and if you mess up, you lose. I don't know where there's tranquility of that. It has pictures of a sea, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe you're trying to achieve tranquility by winning, but it's a very, very stressful little game. So be it. I'm not saying the game is bad. I'm just saying it's not tranquil. However, how does it play, you might wonder? It's a bunch of cards. You're putting them in sequential order. Let me show you. In this game, you're going to have a grid on the table, which you're going to use these Tranquility border cards to put around it, just so you know where the grid is. As a side note, there is a player mat for this game, and I don't think you very often need player mats, but boy, oh boy, do I feel like you need one for this game itself, because otherwise it's kind of hard to see this grid out on the thing. At the same time, it's hard to justify getting a player mat for a game that comes in a box this size. But regardless, you're going to have a deck of cards that are numbered from 1 to 80. These are going to be shuffled and dealt out to all the players. There's also some finish cards in this deck. And once you deal them out to everybody, everyone's going to make their own draw pile, draw 5 cards from that pile, and then they'll shuffle a start card into their deck. Now, what players are trying to do is they're trying to fill this grid. And to do so, they need to win the game, you need to play a finish card, but a start card needs to have been played, and all the cards in the grid, wherever a card might be in the grid, they need to be in numerical order, at least ascending order. So, for example, a 46 could be placed in front of a 49. It could even be placed here, and then here you can put a 47 or a 48. So you can start with 1 here, going all the way up to 80, but you could also start with 2 there. As you place cards in the grid, you can place them where you want, but if you place it next to a card that's already in the grid, you need to discard cards equal to the difference between them. So I put a 46 next to a 49, I need to discard 3 cards. Discarded cards are never coming back, so you're not going to want to do something as insane as putting a 16 next to a 46. Even a 42 next to a 46 might seem kind of deadly. However, if you have 2 cards like this and I place a card in between them, then you'll notice there's a difference of 4 between 42 and 46 and a difference of 3 here. I only need to get rid of the smaller number. So if that comes into play, you may be able to do some clever plays in the sense that if I had a 48, for example, I might play it there, and I'm only going to have to discard 1 card. At some point, like I said, someone will draw their start card. They're going to need to play their start card down here, and then everyone needs to discard 10 cards. This is the only time in the game that people can communicate. They can't communicate what their cards are in their hand, but you will communicate how many cards you want to discard. So as time goes by, you're going to be slowly placing cards, trying to figure out exactly where they go in the grid. Ooh, here's a 1. I might place that here, but without communicating. If at any point in time, someone does not have a legal move, you've run out of cards. And by the way, instead of playing a card, you can simply discard 2 cards. That might be a better option than getting rid of cards to lose them. But at any point someone doesn't have a legal move to make, then everybody loses. There's 49, hopefully someone played there, and I can play the 48 there. Anyhow, as people are playing the cards, if you don't have a legal move, you lose. Otherwise, once the whole grid is filled up, hopefully someone has drawn their finish card, they'll play the finish card up here. Someone played the start card here, all the numbers are in order, and you win. If you think that's too easy, there are other variants to play, or different ways to set the board up, and there is a whole section of stormy cards and things that you can shuffle in to make the game more difficult with sea monsters, jagged rocks, etc. The quality of the cards is really nice. The background, and you can play a variant where the direction it goes up matters, but the background is a little bit different in each one based on kind of where the numbers are. So you'll see 15 and 12 here have the same art on them, but the 20s has different art, the 30s has different art, and so on and so forth. The cards are really beautiful. It's a really pretty game. It's easy to see the numbers. The rules are pretty clear, although also a bit oblique, but that's not the rules' fault. I'll explain that in a bit. The whole thing fits in a very small box. Like I said, I feel the game needs a playmat, but the playmat doesn't fit in the box, so that's a little confusing. You know, I have a big giant playmat for this. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the components here. Tranquility is a hard game to grok. It really is. It's this, you have to kind of figure out how to do it. So as the game plays, 1 through 80 is going to go out there. You have 80-some cards in the deck. You have some finish cards, some start cards. Somebody needs to discard, keep a start card and play it. Everyone else needs to get rid of their start cards. You have to figure out who does that without communicating. You need to kind of play the cards in a checkerboard pattern, because as long as they're not touching each other, you don't discard any. So if the 68 is played and you have the 67, it's not necessarily good to put it next to it, but if someone puts the 66 there, then I can put the 67 in between because I only discard one card. And I say all that because I like Tranquility. I want to be clear, I think it's an interesting, neat game. But it's going to have a couple hang-ups because it doesn't make sense to most people when you explain it. It's not an easy game to explain. You almost have to play through half a game before people even understand how it works. It's definitely building on the success of limited communication games like The Mind, and this one's a really tough one, but this one also has some very obvious things that I think I would go over before the game, like that checkerboard pattern I mentioned, saying, hey, it's good to play cards every other spot. In fact, in our first game of it, which you can see because we played it live here on our channel, it was pretty obvious that we were just talking our way through it because we weren't really quite sure kind of what the strategy was, how it works. Once you get there, you probably get pretty good at the game, putting the cards out. It seems like it's impossible, but it's not. Then you can add in the harder stuff. Whew, again, belying the falsehood of the name. It's interesting. It's a neat little card game, and I don't know that I played anything like it except for maybe The Game. Yes, there's a card game called The Game that has some similarities to this, again, putting cards in sequential, or The Mind. It's definitely a follow-up, or feels like it's in that same ballpark as those games. So my explaining it here should kind of tell you if it's for you, because it is not for everyone. There are some folks that are going to go, yeah, this isn't for me. I want to be able to laugh and talk at a table. Not a whole lot of that going on here. I suppose you can talk and laugh about other things, but not about the game itself. You're working with math and numerical stuff, and it's possible for one person to play a card in such a way that causes everyone to lose, which might not feel good if that person is you. That does make this a pretty decent solo, 2-player, 3-player type game, though, because you can work with fewer people, and it is a sort of puzzle that you're trying to figure out. I do wish the playmat wasn't as necessary as it seems to be. I mean, I guess people might argue and say you don't need it. Sure, you don't need it, but it is a whole lot easier to figure out where those cards go if you have it. Anyway, so that feels like a mixed review all over the place. And again, I want to say I like this game. I'll play this. It's interesting. But I just think that there are some, this is one of those games that I'm not going to be like, everyone should try this out. Now, some people should try it out, and some people are going to love it. Others are going to loathe it. I am more towards the liking end of the scale, but even I had some, bit of felt like jumping into the deep end of a pool when I first played it. Now that I have some games in my belt, I'm like, oh, so this is how these cards play. And it's an interesting card game to come back to. So that's Tranquility. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment approved.